Hi everyone, welcome to Devlog number 19. Today I'm going to show how to fix using normals with shaders in the Blender game engine. This is something that was never supported before, and to my knowledge it's never been addressed in any of the Blender game engine forums and has never been really fixed. So I'm going to show the fix that I figured out. So first, thank you to all my patrons. Even though it seems like what I might be doing is a little bit crazy pants, it's actually super duper smart, because what I'm doing is I'm inhabiting a sphere that is creative, but I would say is very uncomfortable and very uncharted. But the progress that I make also helps you. So thank you to all of my new patrons who are supporting me because they're supporting themselves. The power of open source is this is an open game engine. So when you support me, any project that you would like to do will also be supported by me. That's kind of how it works. Anyway, it's really cool. So these are the best people in the world, and now I'm going to show the solution. So normally, normals would work in the Blender game engine just fine if you use this toggle button here called extra textures. But if you want to use nodes or extra textures where you can get more complicated shaders, like you can see here, this is a simple material, and what I'm doing is I'm sampling the non-color information of a normal, and you can see the normals are working great. So this is pretty standard, and it works in the viewport, it works in the standalone player. If I launch this as its own little individual application like so, you can see the normals are working. The problem is when you finally export your Blender game to a desktop app, like an exe, an executable, what ends up happening is you fail to render the normals by not sampling the RGB information, but it just doesn't do it. So here's my test example, which is loading this same file from a separate Blender file as an executable. And you can see here the normals are now broken. What's going on here? Well, basically this image that's in the node editor, even though in the Blender file here I've specified to use the non-color, it's defaulting to this color. So you can see here this same error of the normals is the same error we just saw in the launcher. So if I launch the game again right over here, you can see, oh, the normals are sampling the red, green, blue information rather than the normal map information. And that's because I don't have the ability to specify what color channel to sample with this texture in the Blender game engine. But there's a workaround. If I go to cycles and I go to input, down to texture, and I load in an image, I simply can reference the same exact image, load it in, jump back to the Blender game engine, and now I'm going to pipe this in. And what's different? Not much has changed really. Two things have changed. One is the way that the UV information is sampled, because you can see it's a little warped, but also now I can select non-color data. And what does that mean? That means when I launch my game from a separate executable now, the normals, I hit the mic, sorry. The normals are working. Great, that's awesome. So the normals now function, hooray! But you can see everything's a little bit distorted and everything's off. So to compensate for that, I just taken a vector mapping node here, and I'm going to move this down by 0.5 and 0.5, and then I'm going to move the x-axis negative 1.5, and similarly, I'm going to do the exact same thing for the y-axis. And this shifts the UV information, which is sampled differently by the image texture input provided by cycles, and fixes everything back up. Now when I run this here, I have a benefit. I don't need to use extra textures because normals are here. And also when I run the game through the executable in a separate file, obviously the normals still work, but of course we want the launcher here, the executable, and you can see the normals now work. So this is a huge benefit because I don't need to turn on extra textures or ramps, but I still get my normals in my shaders. This also gives you a lot of freedom. If you wanted to mix normals during runtime for the game, or you wanted to have interactive globally mapped coordinates for normals, there's all sorts of really compelling reasons to use the shader nodes rather than simply the default material in the Blender game engine. Anyway, this is how you fix it, and I hope this is helpful to everyone. Thank you again for all your support, and now I'm going to end the video the moment I find the button. I found the button. Thank you all.